Hello, welcome to EdStar, Achieving Excellence Together. Union Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Monday tabled the Economic Survey 23-24. The survey is authored by Chief Economic Advisor V. Anant Nageshwaran and his team. Here are the key highlights from Economic Survey 23-24. So let's begin with some of the key highlights. First is our state of economy. Economic Survey conservatively projects a real GDP growth of 6.5 to 7% with risks evenly balanced, cognizant of the fact that the market expectations are on the higher side. Uh, the, the Economic Survey projects the real GDP growth of 6.5% to 7%. It adds that the RBI expects inflation to be 4.5% in financial year 25 and 4.1% in financial year 26. Then the Indian economy is on a strong wicket and stable footing, demonstrating resilience in the face of geopolitical challenges, the survey states. It also adds that the headline inflation rate is largely under control. However, the inflation rate of some specific food items is elevated, which we are going to see on the next slide, in the further in the slides of the inflation also. And along with that, the survey states that for recovery to be sustained, there has to be heavy lifting on the domestic front, as the environment has become extraordinarily difficult to reach agreements on a key global issues such as trade, investment, and climate. The survey also pointed out that RBI data on India's balance of payments BOP, which shows slight decline in investment interest of external investors from financial year 23 to financial year 24. And India's economy carried forward the momentum it built in financial year 23 and financial year 24 despite a gamut of external challenges. The focus on maintaining microeconomic stability ensured that external challenges had minimal impact on India's economy. India's real GDP grew by 8.2% in financial year 24, exceeding 8% in the 3 out of 4 quarters of financial year 24. So here is some charts, some diagrams which has been taken from the directly from the economic survey document. Here it shows that a recovery to pre-pandemic trajectory in GDP and the gap from trending reducing steadily. So you can just refer to the economic survey once again for these complete explanation of these graphs. These are some broad-based deployment of union government capex. You can just pause the video and have a look on this. These all graphs has been taken from the economic survey. So now let's come to the inflation. The survey highlights that the inflation rate was stable, reflecting effective monetary policy management. Central government's timely policy interventions and RBI's price stability measures helped maintain retail inflation at 5.4%, the lowest level since the pandemic. Central government announced price cuts for LPG, petrol and diesel. As a result, uh, retail fuel inflation stayed low in financial year 24. In August 2023, the price of the domestic LPG cylinders was reduced by 200 rupees per cylinder across all markets in India. Since then, LPG inflation has been in the deflationary zone. Further, uh, center lowered the prices of petrol and diesel by 2 rupees per liter. Consequently, retail inflation in petrol and diesel used in vehicles also moved to the deflationary zone. So, uh, listen this thing carefully. India's policies adeptly steered through challenges, ensuring price stability despite of global uncertainties. The dynamics of core inflation in the post-pandemic world indicating that while overall inflation is managed, certain sectors may still face upward pressures. Food inflation remains a concern, with with variations across states. The survey emphasizes the need for targeted interventions to manage food prices effectively and makes a case for changing the inflation targeting framework of the central bank by excluding food inflation. IMF also forecast the inflation at 4.6% in 24 and 4.2% in 2025 for India. Going forward, the RBI projects inflation to fall to 4.5% in financial year 25 and 4.1% in financial year 26, assuming normal monsoon and no external or policy shocks. So let us move further to the employment and skill development. Indian labor market indicators have improved in the last 6 years, with the employment rate declining to 3.2% in 22-23. The periodic labor force survey indicates a surge in agricultural employment attributed to reverse migration and increased female participation in the labor force. The survey estimates that India will require significant job creation until 2036 to accommodate its growing workforce, emphasizing the need for strategic planning and employment generation. The survey suggests that collaboration between government, academia, and the private sector is essential for effective skill development. And there has been also an observation that there has been an increase in EPFO enrollment, consistent improvement in higher education enrollment ratio. There has been a progress in the skill development. As I have earlier said, the EPF membership numbers grew by an impressive 8.4% CAGR between 15 and 24 financial year. India can have slight negative impact on labor due to AI without because as without labor income, without labor employment, there is no demand growth. So along with that, as we have seen the negative impact also, we will look into some of the key challenges further in the slides. So you can see the graph, the declining quarterly urban unemployment rate. So now let's come over to the agriculture and MSME. The survey highlights the potential for growth in agriculture, emphasizing the need for crop diversification and improved productivity through technological adoption. MSMEs are identified as crucial for economic growth, contributing slightly to employment and innovation. The survey points out challenges they face, including access to finance and markets. Various government initiatives aimed at supporting agriculture and MSMEs are discussed, including financial assistance and capacity building programs. And in the MSMEs, as we can say, India's pharmaceutical market stand as world's third largest by volume with the valuation of $50 billion USD. India is the world's second largest clothing manufacturer and one of the top five exporting nations. India's electronics manufacturing sector accounts for an estimated 3.7% of the global market share in financial year 22. Despite disruptions on many fronts, the manufacturing sector achieved an average annual growth of 5.2% in the last decade, with the major growth drivers being chemicals, wood products and furniture, transport equipment, pharmaceuticals, machinery, and equipment. Industry must take the lead in incentivizing R&D and innovation and improve the skill levels of the workforce by forging active collaboration with academia. PLI schemes, these are the means the PLI schemes have been a very very efficient as these schemes attracted over 1.28 lakh crore of investment until May 2024, which has led to production of rupees 10.8 lakh crore and employment generation over 8.5 lakhs. Here we can say the growth of agriculture and the allied sectors. And here is the share of industry and its components in total GVA and annual growth of industries and components in constant prices. So let's move to the services. The service sector continues to be a major driver of economic growth, contributing significantly to GDP. The survey notes the need for improving service quality and efficiency. Globally, India's services exports constituted 4.4% of the world's commercial services exports in 2022. Computer services and business services exports accounted for about 73% of India's services exports and witnessed a 9.6% growth of YOY in financial year 24. India's share in digitally delivered services exports globally increased to 6% in 23 from 4.4% in 2019. The aviation sector in India has grown substantially with a 15% of YOY increase in the total passengers handled at Indian airports in financial year 24. So, the two significant transformations are reshaping India's services landscape, the rapid technology driven transformation of domestic service delivery, and diversification of India's services exports. So, here are some of the graphs, the post COVID firming in the share of the services sector in overall GVA, and this is the increasing trend in GVA in the services sector. So, now let's come over to the infrastructure. The survey discusses the critical role of infrastructure in facilitating economic growth and highlights ongoing public investment initiatives to enhance infrastructure. Key challenges include financing, project execution, and addressing bottlenecks in infrastructure development that need strategic solutions. In the infrastructure, we have seen that Indian Railways have introduced around 50 pairs of Vande Bharat yet, and Indian Railways is yet to introduce Vande Metro train set coaches in financial year 25. India's rank in the international shipment category in the World Bank Logistics Performance Index has improved to 22nd in 2023 and 44th in 2040. So now, the major factor is that the climate change and India. The survey outlines India's commitments to transitioning to renewable energy sources with a focus on solar and wind energy. It emphasizes the need for a balanced energy mix to ensure energy security. India's climate action strategies are discussed, highlighting adaptation measures and importance of low carbon development pathways. So, the Western approach does not seek to address the root of the problem, that is overconsumption, but rather chooses to substitute the means to achieve overconsumption. India's ethos emphasizes a harmonious relationship with nature, in contrast to the culture overconsumption in other parts of the developed world. Mission Life focuses on human nature harmony, promoting mindful consumption, than overconsumption that lies at the root of the global climate change problem. So, now have a look on the external sector. India's external sector remained strong amidst ongoing geopolitical headwinds, accompanied by sticky inflation. India's rank in the World Bank's Logistic Performance Index improved by 6 places from 44th in 2018 to 38th in 2023 out of 139 countries. India is gaining market share in global exports of goods and services. Its share in global goods Exports was 1.8% in financial year 24 against an average of 1.7% during financial year 26-20. India is the top remittance recipient country globally, with remittances reaching a milestone of 120 billion USD in 23. So, some medium term outlook. As Amrit Kal's growth strategy based on six key areas: boosting private investment, expansion of MSMEs, agriculture as growth engine, financing green transition, bridging education employment gap, and building capacity of states. For Indian economy to grow at 7% plus, a tripartite compact between the union government, state governments, and the private sector is required. The key areas of the policy focus in the short term to medium term: job and skill creation, tapping the full potential of the agriculture sector, addressing MSME bottlenecks, managing India's green transition, deftly dealing with the Chinese conundrum, deepening the corporate bond market, tackling inequality, and improving our young population's quality of health. The economic survey for 23-24 stands out from previous economic surveys in that it provides a more realistic picture of the challenges before India's economic growth. As such, despite India's GDP growing at a more than 8% in financial year 23-24, the survey pegs the GDP growth rate for the current financial year 24-25 between 6.5% and 7%. So, here are some key challenges that the survey flags and recommendation it makes to address these. First, have a look on some of the key challenges. The survey notes that while there has been a boom in telecommunications and internet facilitated business process outsourcing, the BPO, the next wave of technological evolution might bring the curtains down. The environment for FDI to grow in the coming years is not highly favorable. High interest rates in developed countries have not only raised the cost of funding but also increased the opportunity cost to invest in developing countries like India. The survey emphasized that the corporate sector had not responded, despite the union government cutting taxes in September 2019 to facilitate capital formation. The Indian economy needs to generate an average of nearly 78.5 lakh jobs annually till 2030 in the non-farm sector to cater to the rising workforces. So, along with that, there is one more factor: the data deficiency. Uh, A constant refrain against the government has been the lack of good quality and timely data, especially related to employment. It has been officially stated by the Chief Economic Advisor itself in the press release of the economic survey. In the survey, the Chief Economic Advisor accepted that this was indeed a gap that was holding back a proper analysis. Along with that, he also stated about the lifestyle disadvantages. The survey notes that social media, screen time, sedentary habits, and unhealthy food are lethal mix that can undermine public health and productivity and diminish India's economic potential. And one more factor along with this is the China challenge. India continues to be overly dependent on China for imports, especially for renewable energy. China has not let go of the low skills manufacturing space that India wanted to occupy. China is important for India's trade. We have no alternative choices to depend on because China have eliminated the capital goods dependence in the West as well. There are some key recommendations which has been stated in the economic survey also, like the job creation by the private sector. One of the central pillars of the past two Narendra Modi governments has been the determination to reduce the role of government in the economy and incentivize the private sector to take over the dominant position. In doing so, the government had hoped that the private sector would create jobs. The survey reiterated that hope it is in the enlightened self-interest of the Indian corporate sector swimming in excess profits to take its responsibility to create jobs seriously. Another recommendations it is lifestyle changes by private sector. India's traditional lifestyle, food and recipes have shown how to live a healthily and in harmony with nature and environment for centuries. It makes commercial sense for Indian businesses to learn about and embrace them, for they have a global market waiting to be led rather than tapped. And the third recommendation, farm sector as savior. Traditional economic theories suggest that as economies develop, they make a structural transition from agriculture to manufacturing and services. But the survey states that trade protectionism, resource hoarding, excess capacity, and dumping onshoring production, and the advent of AI are narrowing the scope for countries to squeeze out growth from manufacturing services and forcing us to turn conventional wisdom on its head. In other words, a return to roots, as it were, in terms of farming practices and policy making, can generate higher value addition from agriculture, boost farmers' income, create opportunities for food processing and exports, and make the farm sectors both fashionable and productive for India's urban growth. So, the fourth recommendation, removing regulatory bottlenecks. The licensing inspection compliance, the LIC, requirements that all levels of government continue to impose on businesses is an onerous burden. Relative to history, the burden is lightened. Relative to where it ought to be, it is still a lot heavier. MSMEs are the sector that require to be relieved of regulatory burden the most. And it has been stated by the chief economic advisor that this is the responsibility of the state governments. The last recommendation is building state capacity. The chief economic advisor noted that what was needed in the economy now was not big reforms but the grunt work. To this end, it advocated building up a state capacity for sustaining and accelerating India's progress. So, India is extremely unique. No country of this size in terms of geographical spread, population size, has managed to attain the transition and transformation within the democratic framework with 29 states, multiple languages, and a huge ancient civilization. Country internally has many different countries within it. So, this is all for today. It is all about the key highlights of the economic survey. Those who are preparing for the civil services examinations, they actually need to go through the document that will be published on the website of the edstar.in, the key highlights of the economic survey. And it is a quite recommendation for the civil servant aspirants that they must go through the entire economic survey document once. uh, so that's all for today. Thank you. If you have any sort of queries or doubt, please feel free to contact the AdStar. The administrator will reply you back within some sort of time, and have a nice day. Thank you.